Kicking off our list, number 10 is the Kardashians. The Kardashians are a majorly messy family that really need to be stopped. From failed business ventures to literally mistreating their staff, I could occupy an entire top 50 list of terrible things these people have done. The fact that they paid for a television show to be produced solely so they can share their lives with the world is another telltale sign that these people are terrible. They have documented themselves casually shopping for grave plots, tricking their sisters into thinking they're eating the stuff that comes out of you after birth. Yeah, that happened. And let's not forget Kendall's cringe-inducing Pepsi commercial. So good. Their mom took pictures in her birthday suit in the pool the family shares. And then there is the extended family, husbands, wives, and children. Scott Disick was a huge part of the family for a long time, and he is an actual tyrant. On top of his issues with no-no juice and substance control, he is also a very entitled man who likes to shove money down the throats of the people who serve him. Kylie Jenner has lied about her wealth to the point where she had to release an apology to Forbes magazine, who named her one of the youngest billionaires on the planet. She's also responsible for headaches and burns beyond belief at the facilities that create and package her beauty products. In 2020, while we were all at home trying to be, decent human beings, a lot of celebrities felt that they were entitled to their freedom, and the Kardashians were some of the most belligerent people on the planet, literally partying every chance that they could and sharing those pictures with the world. I bought a VR helmet in 2020 and they partied on a rooftop with A-listers. How different our lives are. Number 9, the Smiths. Cheating rumors and dating scandals have followed the Smiths throughout their entire relationship. Since day one, people knew that they were in an open relationship or they were cheating with each other, and it turns out that those are 100% true, because Jada Pinkett Smith revealed in her Worthy book and the interview that she did like a week before it came out that herself and Will Smith were separated for 7 years. Jada and the rest of her family have often been linked to the controversial religion of science, if you know what I mean, though no members apart from Jada have ever actually admitted to being involved in any way, shape, or form. Jada denies that she's a full-fledged member, but facts are she's been spotted attending several church events over the years. Former member Leah Remini actually backed up the claims that Jada was involved, telling the Daily Beast that she herself interacted with Ms. Smith at an event taking place at a Scientology celebrity center. Their kids have also disowned them several times in the public eye and admitted to being raised by nannies, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was going to be a biopic about this family sometime soon. They are just terrible. Number 8, the Biebers. Before becoming husband and wife, Justin and Hailey Bieber were slowly building up their careers as a musician and a model respectively. They met while Justin was still dating musician and former Disney star Selena Gomez and struck up a secret romance. Justin and Selena were constantly on and off again, so Hailey and Justin became closer and closer with each split, being friends at first, but now they became an item in 2018. Now, while they were both fairly famous before becoming official, following their marriage, they rose to a new level of success and recognition. Justin has become one of the most replayed artists around the world, and Hailey has been working in the fashion industry, both on stage and of course behind the sewing machine. While their relationship may be true love, the fame and recognition that comes with their celebrity status is probably the only thing that's actually keeping them together. Number 7, the Cyruses. The Cyrus family really only consists of Miley and her dad Billy Ray. However, they've both faced several pressing issues ranging from substance control issues to infertility, but they have actually stopped speaking to each other entirely. It's pretty straightforward. Hannah Montana herself disowned her dad after he decided to marry a woman who was on the show with Miley when she was a teen. Billy Ray had a stellar country career before Miley got her own show. Some would argue that as time's gone on, that she started to outshine her dad. I'm just kidding, there's no argument. She is definitely more famous than Billy. Billy decided to pull a weird move though and started dating a woman named Fire Rose who acted alongside Miley on Hannah Montana. Miley stopped speaking to her father the moment that she saw them together, especially after she discovered how much Billy spends on jewelry and overall gifts. Number 6, the Timberlakes. Sometimes people should just really think before they do things, like when Justin and his wife Jessica Biel posted photos of themselves wearing #TimesUp pins on their way to the Golden Globes in 2018. Yes, at this time there was a ton of online presence for the Time's Up movement. Most celebrities in attendance that year were wearing nothing but black, and they were sporting the support pins. The reason people were upset with how Justin did things was because he had just started a project with Woody Allen, and for people who might have forgotten, the Time's Up movement was an initiative by women in Hollywood calling for a change in the treatment of women across the industry. So Woody Allen is controversial because in 1992 an investigation took place into the concerns that he had physically mistreated his daughter Dylan Farrow. Woody was never actually charged, but those accusations followed him everywhere he went, so anyone who was involved with him immediately got the similar accusations. This led many people online to call Justin out for the hypocrisy of wearing the pin while working with Woody Allen. Justin blissfully was unaware of the controversy, but he apologized later nonetheless. Number 5, the Sheen Sheen-Estevez family. Despite not sharing the same last name, Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen were associated with each other a lot back in the day. Sons to father Martin Sheen, Charlie and Emilio were set to follow in their father's footsteps, and they did so pretty well. Emilio has appeared in cult classics like The Mighty Ducks and of course The Breakfast Club. Meanwhile, Charlie was in a ton of movies in the 80s and 90s, but he eventually made a home on the show 2.5 Men. Now, just because they had successful careers though doesn't mean they always got along. The family has had its struggles with substance control and no-no juice, with Charlie Sheen being one of the more infamous celebrities that there is. The family did their best to come together when Charlie was diagnosed with HIV and when their father had to undergo a quadruple bypass. In terms of acting, they've appeared together on screen a handful of times, but as time has gone on, they've grown further and further apart, leaving each other to their own devices. Charlie's troubles became public in the early 2000s, being seen as an unhinged man who was wily and more than likely under the influence of no-no snow. He was eventually fired from his show and has yet to be in anything new or net-worthy since Scary Movie 5. Meanwhile, Emilio reprised his Mighty Ducks role for a Disney Plus show, something that he actually was openly against for most of his career. According to his Breakfast Club co-stars, he's the only one who doesn't keep in touch because he thinks that the past should be left in the past. Number 4. The Baldwins. Alec Baldwin is not the only man with the Baldwin last name. He actually has 5 siblings altogether, each more Baldwin-y than the last. Despite having 3 brothers who have each gone on to the film industry in one form or another, you would be surprised to know they rarely work together. Steven has some pretty hardcore religious beliefs. They seem to clash with the beliefs of the rest of the fam jam. Willie Baldwin is another actor in the family, working in movies like Candyland, Fair Game, and Flatliners. And of all the Baldwin boys, he seems to have the least dirty laundry, but he's a Baldwin, so who knows? Danny Baldwin is the second oldest of the crew and is again an actor, usually playing in smaller roles and side characters with movies like Vampires and Bound. Together they make the Baldwin Boys, a powerhouse of acting family members, and you would think that with all that star power and family tightness that they would make one movie together. Well, they've only ever appeared on screen together once, and it was in a documentary called My Promise to PJ. Apart from that, they only star in separate films, probably because if you put more than one of them in the same room, they just kind of mold into one Baldwin. Number 3, the Duggars. For a long time, the Duggar family were shining stars on the channel TLC. 19 Kids and Counting was one of the most popular TV shows in the channel's history when it premiered, and it stayed on the air until 2015, when the show was abruptly cancelled due to the fact that Josh Duggar was arrested and confirmed to be guilty of some truly heinous and dark things. Not worth repeating, let's just chalk it up to he is an absolutely horrible person. The series, as you would expect, followed a family of 19, mom and dad, and 17 children. If you're curious about not only the motivations to have 17 children, but the actual real-world lives that they led outside of TLC, I recommend you check out the documentary about the family currently on Amazon Prime. It's intense. Despite the show being cancelled and World collectively agreeing that the show was a waste of time in the first place, TLC decided to give the sisters of the series a spin-off show. Josh was later sentenced to 12 years in prison, and the show is now a forgotten memory. Number 2, the Coppolas. So when you think of Nicolas Cage, you might be thinking, who is this guy related to? Didn't he just spawn out of thin air? Well, the answer is the late great Francis Ford Coppola. Nick's uncle, Francis, was responsible for some pretty visually striking and overall gripping films like Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992, as well as the Godfather franchise starring Al Pacino. Now, his nephew Nick really wanted to be a big screen star and had the energy to prove it. He was born into the Coppola family, so of course he would get a chance to prove his worth. Francis arranged an audition for Nick to be a part of the 1982 comedy Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which he got. It wasn't a big role, but it was enough for Nick to get into the right room with the right people, and ever since the year 1982, he's not only released one movie every single year, other than 1985 for some reason, but his on-screen roles combined with a few TV appearances here and there add up to over 110. 110 times this man has graced our screens and has been both exhilarating and exhausting. And at number 1, the Arquettes. So there have been a few celebrities in Hollywood with the last name Arquette, but the most popular and universally known is David. David's best known from the Scream franchise, but if I'm being honest, I know him from the movie C-Spot Run. I had it on VHS when I was a kid, and my goodness, I loved this movie. It's so funny. David is actually a really solid actor, but unfortunately his family history is a little worse for the wear. He's 4th generation in the acting world, with his great-grandparents being a famed vaudeville duo. His grandfather Cliff was a comedian who performed under the name Charlie Weaver. His dad managed the Second City in Chicago and continued to work as a puppeteer and actor after relocating to Hollywood, and his mom was also an actor. Now, all of David's siblings are actors: Richmond, Rosanna, Patricia, and Alexis. The family was close, but they were also raised on a commune for a good portion of David's childhood. Of course, they had to move there after the family home was burned down when he was young, because people suck. Number 10. Katherine Heigl. Kathy was riding high back in 2007. The former Grey's Anatomy star not only won an Emmy for Best Supporting Actress in a Drama Series, but she also started transitioning to the big screen with the success of her first feature comedy Knocked Up alongside comedy legend Seth Rogen. Unfortunately, her rise to the top quickly became a free fall into a volcano following an ill-fated Vanity Fair interview the following January. In the interview, Katherine made a move that still has a lot of people scratching their heads to this day. She openly bashed the film that made her famous, claiming that it painted women as true, humorless, and uptight, while also placing blame on Seth Rogen for writing the men in the story as lovable, goofy, fun guys. The film still sits at an impressive 89% on Rotten Tomatoes because, while she might claim that it was a problematic movie, the final product is fun, it's a love story, it's filled with good jokes, performances, it's a great movie. If you've never seen it, you should check it out. Seth felt betrayed by the comments as they never had a fight on set and it never seemed like she was uncomfortable at any point. These comments, combined with some negativity towards her Grey's Anatomy writers, caused her agents to drop her as a client, and her time in Hollywood slowly came to a halt. These days, she stars in the CBS comedy Our House, but it's looking like she might never return to the big screen again. Number 9. Roseanne Barr. In the late 80s, Roseanne starred in a sitcom titled after herself, and she starred alongside Hollywood heavyweight John Goodman in the series that followed the couple's everyday lives as a working class family. The show aired for 230 episodes and eventually got canceled in the mid-90s. The show was eventually revived in 2018 as the same wholesome content for a new generation. Unfortunately for Roseanne, sitcom producers have Twitter. Her show was quickly re-canceled only a few hours following Barr posting a tweet about Valerie Jarrett, telling the world that she was the product of Planet of the Apes and a certain brotherhood having a baby. She later apologized for the tweets, but the damage was done. ABC Entertainment President Channing Dunny said in a statement that Roseanne's Twitter statement is abhorrent, repugnant, and inconsistent with their values. Barr actually defended her tweets, saying that they weren't racist, but in fact were just jokes, because you know those can be the same thing, Roseanne. Number 8. Jussie Smollett. In January of 2019, famous actor Jussie Smollett walked into a Chicago police precinct and reported that he had just been the victim of a hate crime. He told the police that two strangers began shouting racial slurs at him, while one was yelling, the other was pouring the chemical bleach onto him before they both held him down and tied a rope around him. He claimed to have suffered severe rope burn and was physically ill from the experience. As we all know, that isn't exactly what happened. The so-called strangers were actually two brothers who worked with Jussie on the set of the hit series Empire, and according to inside sources, Jussie paid the brothers $3,500 each to help him stage the event, planning every single detail right down to the precinct visit. The proof that all this was a ruse made up for publicity was the fact that the altercation conveniently took place directly in front of a security camera. An investigation took place that found ample evidence that Smollett had set himself up. They found receipts from the ropes used during the altercation that were left in the assailant's home. Way to hide the evidence. There was also security footage taken from a store where the brothers can be seen trying on and purchasing ski masks, gloves, and red hats. I would pay anything to see that footage. It would just be hilarious now. At the end of the day, Jussie was forced to serve 150 days in prison and pay the Chicago Police Department over $300,000 for wasting their time and resources. So, but by the way, if anyone gets mad for how I pronounce his name, just remember, he faked a hate crime. Maybe focus on that. Number 7, Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle dominated the comedy scene in the 90s and the early 2000s. His stand-up was considered to be the most gut-busting and entertaining around, and his role in films like The Nutty Professor, Robin Hood Men in Tights, and of course the cult classic, one of my favorites, Half-Baked. He took a bit of a break from starring in films to focus on his family and his true passion, stand-up comedy. Despite being on stage for like 12 years, Dave never really learned to follow suit with the times, because there were certain topics that just became a little rude to joke about. And a lot of jokes considered to be funny in the 80s and 90s have not aged well, and unfortunately that seemed to be all the material Dave had. In one of his more recent Netflix specials, Dave decided it was his time and his stage and he could do whatever he wanted, and apparently what he wanted to do was make fun of the LGBTQ+ community, spewing trashy jokes that aren't worth quoting quoting or repeating or Googling, just they were bad. If you're curious how bad, they were rough enough to have Dave's fans turn on him immediately. Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos actually defended the comedian, claiming that he had artistic freedom even after a group of Netflix employees and transgender advocates staged a virtual walkout. He later apologized and said that he handled the situation poorly. Poor Ted, he accidentally supported a bigot. Number 6, Louis C.K. There's not much to say about this guy. He was once a giant in the world of comedy. He had his own show with his name on it, was in movies and TV shows. He was a busy man, but apparently he was also being the creepiest creep to ever live. Hours before his film I Love You Daddy was set to premiere, it was pulled from theaters, and it turned out Louis was being canceled and publicly outed as a few things that I'm not allowed to say on the internet. Let's just call him slimy. For many years, Louis would use his status as a boss and a comedian to intimidate and mistreat his female counterparts. According to the accounts, he would take women aside and ask them if they'd like to watch him feed his geese, as Bubbles would say. Even when they would say no, he'd just whip it out and do it anyway. Several women recounted him blocking their exits as he did his thing, physically forcing them to watch. This man was rightfully fired from all TV shows and films, his comedy tour was cancelled, his agent dropped him off a cliff, and he's now the slimiest man in Hollywood. Number 5, J.K. Rowling. For all you Harry Potter fans, cover your ears, because this one's gonna be rough. J.K. Rowling is known for being the author of the much-loved Harry Potter book series that was eventually adapted into 7 gloriously magical movies, and the 5th one. In June 2020, Rowling retweeted an op-ed piece that discussed people who menstruate, apparently taking issue with the fact that the article didn't use the word woman. She tweeted people who menstruate. I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Wumben, Wimpund, Woomud. While this tweet garnered massive amounts of backlash from fans, Rowling doubled down on her views in more detail. She tweeted, if gender isn't real, there's no same-gender attraction. She said, I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of gender removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. She went on to say that she respected trans people's rights to live any way that they feel is authentic to them. At the same time, her life has been shaped by being a woman. She claimed it wasn't wrong to speak the truth and that she was proud, but like, come on, no. Everyone in the world called JK out for her comments and views, with the live-action Harry Potter stars even taking to Twitter to call out her behavior, standing with the trans community. JK's publishers dropped her from the roster, and the future of her writing career is up in smoke, straight up from the Death Eater's butt. If she had just kept her opinions to herself, maybe The Cursed Child would be an awesome movie instead of a so-so fling. Number 4, CeeLo Green. He saw us driving around town with a girl he loved, and he was like an actual terrible person. When I was growing up, I really liked this guy. FU was my anthem, but little did I know that in 2014, this man would turn out to be a terrible person. CeeLo Green was brought into a court case after a woman alleged that he spiked her drink in 2012, and according to CeeLo, he pleaded no contest to the accusations of supplying X to a woman who claims that she does not remember anything between eating sushi with him and waking up in his home the next day. CeeLo posted a very questionable statement that I'm not going to repeat because it actually almost made me throw up. He was basically arguing why what he did wasn't really what he did, but it was. He later apologized for the comments and eventually shut down his Twitter account, but the backlash was strong. Since then, CeeLo's been blacklisted from Hollywood, and considering he's barely made any music since, he's probably not going to be getting any Grammys anytime soon. Number 3, IShowSpeed. Darren Watkins, who's better known by his YouTube handle IShowSpeed, made headlines a few weeks ago after he accidentally exposed his Reginald Val Johnson on a live stream. The rapper and media influencer had just returned from a trip to Japan, and fans tuned in excitement to see him return to the gaming world and watch as he played a round of Five Nights at Freddy's. When he was startled by a character, he stood up to yell only for his pants to fall down. He sat down and immediately closed the live stream. His account, which had millions of subscribers, was frozen and underwent a review from the powers that be. Following the slew of negative comments he received online, he went on an anger-filled rant in another statement telling his fans to stop talking and shouting a lot of F words I'm not allowed to say online. What is happening right now? Twitter has since lit up with comments from people asking why they're being blamed for him not knowing how to use a belt. The most recent news is that his channel will not be banned despite his blatant violation of their guidelines, but considering the amount of hate this guy got, I can't imagine the channel's going to be very active for much longer. Number 2, Colleen Ballinger. Former YouTuber and terrible woman Colleen Ballinger was accused by several of her fans of being a creepy creepo who just wants to be their friend. Colleen is best known for her character Miranda Sings on YouTube, who was so popular that she got her own Netflix series. If you want to watch that though, you'll need a VPN because I'm not sure where that exists anymore. She was basically messaging her fans to deliver so-called advice when she was actually just trying to manipulate them into being her little with minions and not the little guys from Despicable Me, the fun ones. There was a massive amount of proof in the pudding. Fans had screenshots of conversations, with one fan claiming that she sent him lingerie as a joke because that's hilarious. Following the instant backlash from the world, she decided to post an apology video online where she plays a ukulele, because yes, after this woman is shown being weird to kids, she should sing about it to make it better. In response to the cringiest apology video of all time, people resurfaced a video of her that really should have gotten her canceled way back when a few years ago she decided it would be a fun idea to put on blackface and dance to Beyonce's Single Ladies on stage, because it's just the roughest clip I've ever seen in my life, and no one at that show was like, oh, this is a little uncomfortable. And at number 1, Kanye West. Oh shocker, it's the king of controversy at number 1. I know he goes by Ye now, but I don't care. Kanye may be a famous rapper, but we can agree that he is now best known for being Kim Kardashian's crazy ex-husband. In 2019, Kanye released a series of tweets just, so full of demonetizable content. He said horrible things about several races and religions to the point where his account was shut down and banned by Twitter. His account went dark and dominoes of bad luck began falling down, one after the other. His shoe brand was discontinued, his wife cheated on and divorced him, his best friend in the whole world got kicked out of the office and replaced by Joe Biden. I'd feel bad, but again, I don't care about him. Number 10, Freddie Prinze Jr. Freddie was on track to be one of the greatest film stars of all time in the early 90s and early 2000s, starring in movies like She's All That and the live-action Scooby-Doo movies as Fred. Well, after the second Scooby-Doo movie, he slowly started to vanish from Hollywood, only making small appearances in film and TV. For an actor of his caliber, this was a weird move and fans were a little confused, but it was revealed that Freddie traded his A-list status to be a writer for the World Wrestling Entertainment, aka the WWE. As someone who grew up watching the WWE, I was just shocked and a little bit curious when I read about this information. It turns out Freddie was behind some classic stories over the years. For those who still think wrestling is real, I'm sorry, it's not. Freddie was behind the scenes running the show and literally being the guy who decided who won titles and who got their face caved in with a chair. The WWE is a fun place, and because of how fun the internet is, we can't even show you clips from things that he wrote because wrestling is violent. What's violent about picking your buddy up over your shoulders and slamming them on some concrete, huh? It's very nice. It's a welcoming thing. Instead of working in front of the camera, he was able to make a nice job for himself at a desk. He does not write for the WWE these days. Instead, he opts to spend more time with his family. Number 9, Shia LaBeouf. Shia has been controversial since day one, becoming famous as one of the hardest people to work with in Hollywood. Following the end of his Disney series Even Stevens, Shia kept his acting career going pretty strong, appearing in classics like Holes as the main character Stanley Yelnats, but it wasn't until he starred in the Transformers series that he started going a little cuckoo. Since 2007, Shia's behavior as both an actor and as a person has been getting worse and worse. His fellow actors have reported that his method acting is just way too much and he smells bad all the time, not to mention the several public art displays that have been gifted to the world in the mid-2010s, and of course who could forget the passionate and motivational video where he told us that nothing was impossible and we could do it. While he may still be working today, he's usually the one who backs the projects. In the eyes of Hollywood, Shia canceled himself the minute he stood in front of a green screen. Remember guys, do it. Nothing's impossible, okay? There's also a ton of stuff surrounding heavier subject matter, but again, I've talked about that in another video, so let's move on. Number 8, James Franco. James placed himself in a bubble of public exile when he used his powers for evil. The dude who is known for playing people like Harry Osborn or Tommy Wiseau, multiple collaborations with funny man Seth Rogen, who was his longtime buddy. People thought that this guy was going nowhere but up. He even shifted from comedy into some more serious roles, playing in a movie called True Story as a man on death row telling his tale of woe to Jonah Hill, who plays a writer. Apparently James has a problem keeping his hands to himself though, especially when it comes to his acting students. In 2018, 5 students in his Studio 4 acting school in North Hollywood told the Los Angeles Times that Franco had used his position to exploit them physically. 2 of those women sued Franco and he was forced to settle outside of court and fork over $2.23 million. At the time, he was writing, acting, and directing a show for HBO, which he was allowed to stay on because it was going to be canceled anyway, so who cared? Not only did that show get canceled, but the public outcry forced Seth Rogen to drop his longtime pal, telling the Times of London that the scandal had changed their relationship forever. There is a simple lesson there. Just keep your hands to yourself and be a decent human being. It's pretty simple. Number 7, Katherine Heigl. Kathy was riding high back in 2007. The former Grey's Anatomy star not only won an Emmy for Best Supporting Actress in a Drama Series, but she also started moving onto the big screen with massive success, starring in rom-coms and feature comedies like Knocked Up alongside Seth Rogen. Unfortunately, that that rise quickly became a free fall as an ill-fated Vanity Fair interview the following January sealed her fate. In the interview, Katherine made a move that still has people scratching their heads. She basically bashed the film that made her famous, claiming that it painted women as shrew, humorless, and uptight, while also blaming Seth Rogen for making the men lovable, goofy, and fun. The film still sits at 89% on Rotten Tomatoes because while she may say it was a problematic movie, a lot of people agree that it's a fun movie with great acting. Seth felt betrayed by the comments as they never had any fights on set, it never seemed like she was uncomfortable at any point, and the comments combined with the negativity towards her Grey's Anatomy writers, where she literally said she didn't want an Emmy because she thought the material she used wasn't good enough, caused her agents to drop her as a client, and her time in Hollywood quickly came to a screeching halt. Number 6. Frankie Muniz. Frankie was a child actor that was the lead of his own show, and eventually his own little franchise. Remember Malcolm in the Middle? Or Cody Banks? Best spy on the planet, move over James Bond, bring me Cody Banks. Considering the success of Malcolm and Cody, he was supposed to be the next big thing in Hollywood, but being a child actor can be a 50-50 gig. You either keep acting for the rest of your life, or you pivot and you use the money you've earned to do something you actually love. For Frankie, he decided to pivot and start racing cars. Not on the streets, although that would be interesting. No, Frankie was racing stock cars for NASCAR. At first he was just racing around regular tracks and smaller settings and smaller numbers. In fact, during that time he got into a nasty car accident that left the internet convinced that he had lost his memory, like he didn't even remember Malcolm in the Middle. Well, that's a lie. He did get into a crash, but he only suffered mild memory loss, and it was new memories, not old ones. These days, he can still be spotted behind the wheel of the number 30 car. Number 5. Amanda Bynes. Amanda had her own show and a well-established career before she was even in her 20s. The Amanda Bynes Show was super popular on Nickelodeon. I personally grew up with the kids-based sketch series, and Amanda was asked to participate in quite a few cult classic movies like She's the Man, Easy A, and What a Girl Wants. She was on track to have a long and just stellar career in Hollywood, but she had a bad couple of years. Having a bit of a mental health struggle that became very public, she was slowly blacklisted from Hollywood and stopped appearing in films altogether by 2012. However, she has not just been sitting on a couch with her finger up her rear, no, she actually decided to get clean and get busy in the world of fashion. In the past few years, she decided to go to fashion school, and in 2020 announced that she would be releasing a clothing line very soon. The brand Deer, developed by Amanda Bynes, has received a ton of praise as good clothes made by their childhood hero. So far, it's looking like she'll continue to make clothes for the foreseeable future and is happy to do so. So, good for Amanda. Number 4. Dylan Sprouse. One half of the dynamic duo from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, Dylan and his brother Cole were set up for life. They were a part of one of the best shows that Disney has ever made, spawning a series of spin-offs, a movie, and almost a third series, but Disney lowballed them and made a really bad pitch, so that didn't happen. After their time at Disney, they went on separate paths. Cole decided to stick to his acting chops, and he was casted as Jughead in the series Riverdale that I used to watch a lot, but kinda zoned out when everyone started playing D&D. However, Dylan switched gears and decided to do something that he had been curious about for a long time. Even when he was in his teens, he had been curious about brewing mead. It's a no-no juice made from honey and sugar bases rather than hops. He started making his own and eventually used his money to open his own brewery in 2017. All Wise Meadery is mainly online store that ships and sells the products developed by Zack from Zack and Cody. I don't even like no-no juice, and I would buy a case of this stuff just for the fun of having it. Number 3. Jeff Cohen. Jeff was a child star for a hot minute back in the 1980s and the 1990s. His name is not familiar, but his face should be. Jeff was the man who played Chunk in the classic kids action mystery comedy The Goonies, a character that is still loved today. Unfortunately, following his time on set, the only jobs that he started getting offered were that of a chubby, nerdy kid, and while he was great as Chunk, he understandably didn't want to be typecasted as the same guy in every single movie he did. Something in him told him that Hollywood was just the wrong place to be, so he decided to pivot and went to school. He got into shape and went to school to become a lawyer and even opened his own law firm that he's still running to this day. If you've been injured or are seeking compensation in a court of law, Chunk from The Goonies might be the man handling your case. Number 2. Gina Carano. Gina was slowly building a name for herself in the early 2010s as a woman to be feared on screen, portraying characters like Riley Hicks in the Fast and Furious franchise, with her most recent role as Cara Dune in The Mandalorian, a series that has decided to move on without Miss Carano on set for the simple fact that she's very misguided on her views towards the world. In 2021, Carano made a series of politically charged social media posts posts, the most damaging of which came when she compared modern American political polarization to camps in Germany in 1945. Those aren't the same thing. She also mocked the usage of face coverings during 2020 and was one of the many celebrities who claimed voter fraud following Trump's loss during the election. To throw a cherry on top of the trash Sunday that she made, Gina also made her opinions on pronouns known, claiming that hers were beep boop beep. Yeah, well, beep this. Screw you, Gina! All of this combined eventually culminated in the hashtag #FireGinaCarano on Twitter, which began trending fast, forcing Disney as well as her management company to cut their ties with Gina. Needless to say, The Mandalorian's doing just fine without her, and the rest of Hollywood is very happy that she's dug herself into a deep, dark, cringy grave. And at number 1, Kanye West. He's Kanye West. Do I really need to say more about that? No, it's about it. He's a bad guy who made some bad tweets. If you don't know, Google it.
But coming in at number 10, it's Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson is an actor who has been around for a long time. He is an incredibly talented actor, being in huge franchises like the Dark Knight trilogy and Star Wars, not to mention the many awards he has received for his acting. Despite all that though, he really shocked the world when he publicly admitted in an interview that he once wanted to indiscriminately end the lives of specifically black people after a female friend of his was ruthlessly attacked by a black person. This was about 40 years ago. Speaking to The Independent about how he got into one of his characters for a film, he said, quote, "I went up and down areas with a kosh, hoping I'd be approached by somebody. I'm ashamed to say that. And I did it for maybe a week, hoping some black something would come out of a pub and have a go at me about something, you know? So that I could, and I have to leave the rest up to your imagination of what he could do." But needless to say, many people were pretty furious. Had it been a lesser actor, this may have spelled out the end of his career, yet because Neeson admitted this action in a seemingly apologetic and remorseful way, he was actually hailed by some people as being courageous for admitting and seeking forgiveness. Some people, but not everyone. Despite many people having no sympathy for Neeson's actions, the actor seems to have simply walked away from the entire incident unscathed. It seems a mixture of his status as one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood and the fact that he confessed himself, apologized later, and sought forgiveness on his own has saved him from being cancelled. Number 9, Ezra Miller. Ezra Miller had been having a really good steady climb up the ladder of Hollywood, killing it in Perks of Being a Wallflower, getting a large role in the Fantastic Beasts series, and set to star in The Flash as the lead superhero. But then, Miller seemed to go off the deep end. While they have recently issued a public apology saying that they are suffering from complex mental health issues, there have been a string of incidents that will likely ultimately mean that we may not see much of the actor going forward. Starting in 2020 when they were in an altercation with a woman outside a bar in Iceland, we then move on to 2022. Miller was arrested and charged after they got agitated by people singing karaoke at a bar in Hawaii, which led to the actor yelling obscenities, getting physical, and lunging at a woman. Then, in that same month, also in Hawaii, Miller got a restraining order filed against them by a couple after Miller burst into their bedroom, threatening the male victim, and then took some of their belongings, including social security cards, a wallet, passport, license, and bank cards. The next month, in April, the actor was charged and arrested after they got upset and threw a chair at someone, and then we fast forward to June when Miller is accused of having an upsetting relationship with a young woman named Dakota Iron Eyes. This was all followed that same month by another parent who sought legal action after Miller, quote, menaced their family and acted inappropriately. Then it went to another level when in August, Ezra was accused of burglary. As you can probably tell, the whole thing is a lot, even by Hollywood standards, but yet Ezra is still starring in one of the most anticipated superhero films of this year, although he probably won't be starring in anything going forward. Number 8, Kanye West. The thing about Kanye West is that despite his many offenses, of which there have been many, we all know that this isn't the way the guy has always been. And according to those who know the rapper and fashion designer, he is clearly dealing with some pretty prominent issues regarding his mental health. For the things he's said and done, he is almost like shadow cancelled, where people don't really support the artist himself or his newest works, but tons of people still bump his tunes and just find his newest offenses entertaining more than anything else. People especially love and still listen to his older stuff, and because of that, Kanye obviously can still go around doing what he does. If you have seen the artist in recent interviews or when he has spoken at fashion shows, or if you have listened to anything he said recently, I think it's safe to say that Kanye is sick, as in actually dealing with some serious issues. Of course, it doesn't excuse his actions, for which he really should be cancelled for, but what I think he really needs is help. serious professional help, which is probably true for Ezra Miller too, given the sheer amount of things he's done. Number 7. Ellen. The star, talk show host, and comedian Ellen DeGeneres was once one of the most beloved celebrities around. Her quirky style, her outspoken political views, and her friendly demeanor often went down well with mostly everyone. Her show was built on her kindness, and the endless stream of A-list entertainers she always had on it also showed how well-liked she was in Hollywood. But a bit more recently, the tune has begun to change. According to the complaints, Ellen's management team was often demanding, domineering, and created a toxic work environment, and some were even accused of racism, bullying, and physical mistreatment. The complaints, though, later spilled over to Ellen herself. But what has also come to light is the way she's treated other celebs while literally being filmed on the show. For example, pressuring a pregnant Mariah Carey into revealing that she was pregnant when she wasn't ready to do so by pressuring her to drink champagne. Or when she made Taylor Swift seemingly have a meltdown as she made fun of the amount of Hollywood men who Swift has had relationships with, and then made her go through male celebrities saying whether she has or has not had some kind of interaction with them. While such accusations would usually be enough for other celebrities to be cancelled immediately, Ellen addressed the problems, issued apologies to disgruntled staff, and was relatively unfazed. Sure, her show did eventually come to an end after an epic run, but that wasn't because she was cancelled, it's because she ended the show. Number 6. Jared Leto. Ever since all the way back in 2005, Jared Leto has been facing serious allegations of extremely inappropriate and honestly kinda sick behavior against women of various ages. It's the very reason that DCU director James Gunn has reportedly refused to allow Leto back to reprise his role as the Joker in the franchise going forward. But despite the allegations, which have been coming up for a long time now, he has never seemed to take any kind of hit. He has never faced charges, he has never been outed during the Me Too movement, he hasn't ever been cancelled, and in fact, a lot of people seem to really like this actor. Jared Leto continues to enjoy huge popularity among his fans and even those who are just casual moviegoers. Most other actors would never survive accusations like the ones he has received, but Leto seems to just keep on walking along as if nothing happened and no one bats an eye. Number 5. Gina Carano. Now, I don't believe that having a political opinion that isn't the majority should have you cancelled. That's on the side of ridiculous. It stands against free speech and it's pretty undemocratic. That being said though, comparing the division between Republicans and Democrats to World War II Europe and the atrocities that happened there is just downright stupid, and you are bound to receive backlash. Gina Carano, the former MMA fighter turned Mandalorian star, enraged some fans with a series of politically charged social media posts, including the one I just mentioned in February 2021. Removing the problematic words that would get this video demonetized, her Instagram post read, quote, "Most people today don't realize that to get to the point where soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views?" Answer to that question is, it's very different, Gina. But she didn't back down, and it only got worse when she said on Twitter that her preferred pronouns are beep bop boop, which she defended by saying that she was, quote, "exposing the bullying mentality of the mob that has taken over the voices of many genuine causes." And she decided to do that by openly mocking the LGBTQ+ community. Not too much later, the hashtag Fire Gina Carano began trending on Twitter, and Disney severed ties with the actress. Her management company, United Talent Agency, also dropped her, but yet Carano turned to her pals on the right and worked on Terror on the Prairie, produced by the Daily Wire, a conservative media company. So she's not fully cancelled, but do you think she should be? That's the real question. Number 4. Nick Cannon. Back in 2020, a podcast recording featuring actor, show host, and celebrity father of like 30 children, Nick Cannon, making several comments that many deemed incredibly insensitive, but specifically anti-Semitic. Cannon also discussed offensive conspiracy theories that focused on Jewish people specifically as well. Now, when news of these recordings spread and the anger of the people continued to grow, Cannon was still allowed to continue his work on The Masked Singer, but his longtime producing partner, Viacom CBS, ended their relationship with the actor, who was hosting his incredibly popular Wild 'N Out under the production company. This meant the star could no longer host Wild 'N Out. Now, after the scandal broke, Cannon did publicly apologize, and he even met with rabbis and gave money to a Jewish organization. And likely because of that, in 2021, Viacom CBS responded to his efforts by reinstating him as the host of Wild 'N Out. I personally think he just needs to stop producing so many damn children, but do you think his actions deserve deserved greater repercussions. Number 3. Chris Brown. I'm actually surprised by how popular the R&B star Chris Brown still is. As most people know, the singer faced extreme scrutiny after multiple reports confirmed that he had a brutal physical altercation with his former partner and fellow musician, Rihanna. Most of us have seen the pictures of Rihanna's face after the fact. He even pled guilty to the incident and was required to perform community service. Now sure, Brown expressed remorse for his actions towards Rihanna, but then he returned to releasing songs and albums with actual success. The worst part is that his success stories were also reported alongside articles that he had even more similar experiences with other women who also publicly outed him. Despite the controversy though, Brown won an award for male R&B artist at the AMAs in 2022, which was met with some boos, but he walked away fairly unscathed and continues to go on as if nothing ever happened. Number 2. Louis C.K. Still a success in his own bubble for a good chunk of time, Louis C.K. was among the biggest names in comedy, but that changed when a group of female comics revealed his actions performed in the bedroom without their consent. Now Louis even admitted to his actions following the publication of an investigative story in the New York Times in 2017. A detailed statement on what he did and an apology to the women he did it to was released, and the scandal led to the scrapping of his movie I Love You Daddy, a TV deal with FX, and a large number of pre-booked performances. It cost the comic about $35 million in earnings, and his management and publicists dropped him. But yet, Louis C.K. has continued touring and playing venues including Madison Square Garden to fans who really just couldn't care less. Now, Louis distributes his own material, so he's continued to have comedy specials which can be bought directly from his website, and he even purchased a commercial spot during an episode of SNL. He also won the 2022 Best Comedy Album Grammy for Sincerely Louis C.K., but still he did take a hit and he isn't likely to be making a comeback to what he once had. Do you think that's good enough punishment, or should the repercussions for his actions be more severe as well? And finally, in at number 1 is Will Smith. Now listen, I think just like Ezra Miller and Kanye West, acting legend Will Smith is having a tough go in his personal life that is kind of bleeding out into the public. Will Smith has been one of my favorite actors for years, but none of that makes it okay to storm a stage and get physical with a performer, whether they make fun of your wife's alopecia or not. But that's exactly what he did at the 2022 Oscars to comedian Chris Rock, who compared Jada Pinkett Smith to G.I. Jane as a joke without knowing that she did suffer from the hair loss. Smith then sat back down and yelled the infamous "keep my wife's name out of your effing mouth," as we all know. Now Judd Apatow, Jim Carrey, Amy Schumer, Wanda Sykes, and Zoe Kravitz, plus others, all publicly spoke out against the actor's actions, though others came to his defense, including Tiffany Haddish, Denzel Washington, and Jamila Jamil. Now Sony is said to have put Bad Boys 4 on hold, and Netflix has backburnered Fast and Loose, and CAA, his agency, also reportedly discussed dropping Smith as a client, but ultimately they did not. But for this one, it seems that Smith felt almost instant regret, as evident in his Oscar acceptance speech later on in the awards show. He also ended up quitting the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences, and the Academy then banned him from the ceremony for 10 years. It remains to be seen what will happen with his career going forward and the boatload of projects he is attached to. Do you think he should come back from this one, or do you think that he should kind of just stay off in the dark?
Number 10, Mike Tyson. So I had trouble landing on just one interview to mention when it comes to this man. He is someone who seems to just bounce back after every single heinous thing he's done. So we're gonna run through a few of them. The first time Mike really hurt his career was in the 80s, and it wasn't even something he said. He was doing an interview with his then girlfriend Robin Gibbs. When the topic of Mike's behavior came up, she said herself that Mike had an extremely volatile temper. Recent reports had also surfaced of Mike getting loud and physical with Robin, something she seemingly confirmed, while Mike just stared at the interviewer the entire time, giving him an evil look. Now that was one of the first little notches on his belt. That wasn't really a meltdown. As the years went by, more and more controversies came to light, and during a press tour for his latest bout in the early 2000s, he lashed out at a fan in the crowd, hurling a slew of insults and calling them the British word for cancer sticks. It starts with an F and it rhymes with maggot. The clip became viral overnight and placed his career in jeopardy, but he finally drove that nail into the coffin on CP24's Breakfast Television in 2014. After somehow maintaining enough relevance to get a a one-man show, Mike was sitting down with host Nathan Downer to promote when the interview took a hard left and went from "So, what's the show about?" to "So, should you even be allowed on stage, you monster?" That's not what he actually said, but apparently that's what Mike Tyson heard, because he stopped answering questions and would instead hurl sarcastic insults. The F word is once again his favorite, and just throws it at him. I don't know if you've noticed, but Mike hasn't been on the news much since then, and probably for a good reason. Number 9, Paula Abdul. Q13 Fox News. In 2012, famous judge and British bad boy Simon Cowell decided to fire his fellow X Factor judge after she went on Fox News and made herself sound like a little bit of a fool. During an interview with Q13, things started out a little rocky thanks to some audio issues causing Paula to hear a station in Texas instead of their own. When they eventually got everything up and running, Paula was just as confusing as she was with the original issues. The interviewers were trying to ask her about her visit to Seattle, where Simon claims that the worst singers that he has ever encountered dwell. Instead of defending the city, Paula doubled down and agreed with Simon. It's not the statement though that landed her in the hot seat, it was actually just the way that she was speaking. Paula had always been a little bit animated in her life, using arms a lot when speaking to people, but she was particularly slurry and seemed like she was under the influence of something. This was just one of several interviews where Paula is noticeably woozy. Simon Cowell has actually claimed the only reason she was invited to host on the X Factor in the first place was to see if she would bring in the American Idol viewers, and when that didn't pan out, he realized the right move to make was to let her go because she's not great on television. Of course, Paula was mad about this and confronted Simon several times, only making that meltdown bigger and bigger. Number 8, Robert Downey Jr. Being a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe means a ton of interviews. Now, Robert had the fortune of playing Iron Man for 10 years, being featured in 11 movies. While doing press for his second round with the Avengers in 2015, he had the misfortune of speaking with a legendarily terrible interviewer, Christian Guru Murphy, on Channel 4. Now, I've talked about this guy in other videos for making Quentin Tarantino walk out of an interview, and he is making a return for something pretty similar. The interview is uncomfortable from the very beginning. Christian stumbles through his questions as quickly as he can, with Robert doing his best just to keep things smooth. Instead of asking questions about the movie though, Christian decided to probe Robert about his life in prison and with substance control issues. Now, at first, he's okay and answers the questions, but then Christian brings up his dad and asks if he feels that he escaped his dark past. Robert is visibly anxious and begins breathing pretty heavy to keep himself calm. He asks what they were doing there, and then the team said goodbye. He stood up and walked out of the room, and he said that Christian seemed nice, but things were getting just a little bit too Diane Sawyer for his taste. This was one of the most uncomfortable interview moments in Robert's career, and it's not even close to the worst one for Christian. Number 7, Sofia Vergara. Fans of the show Modern Family will recognize Sofia as Gloria, aka Manny's mom, who is just absolutely hilarious and heartwarming at the same time, even outside of Modern Family. Now, while speaking with Ellen in 2017 about her career and some new projects coming up, Ellen decided to play a game called English Word of the Day. Claiming to be learning Spanish with one word a day, she wished to teach Sofia one as well. Before the segment, Sofia is roasting Ellen for her dislike of cotton, but when Ellen asks if she wants to learn the English word with her, Sofia scoffs and is visibly annoyed, claiming that she speaks English very well. Ellen gives her the word flabbergasted and asks her to define what it means. Not only does she pronounce it correctly the first time, but she knew exactly what it meant. Ellen follows it up with discombobulated, which left Sofia confused and thinking pretty hard. Now, she butchered the word, and while she seemed to be taking things in stride, it turns out Sofia was so frustrated with participating in this game, as she is a bit self-conscious when it comes to her accent. A lot of people consider the segment to be a little bit racist and more cringe-inducing than fun. I've seen the clip. That's accurate. Number 6, Joaquin Phoenix. We understand a dedication to your craft, and Joaquin Phoenix is just a prime example. This dude's acting career has been going steady since he first appeared in the 1989 comedy Parenthood when he was in his teens. Now, while he is seen as one of the greatest actors in recent history, his reputation on set was a little tarnished thanks to a freak out while filming the 2018 solo flick Joker. He appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live to promote the shoot when Jimmy plays a behind-the-scenes clip of Joaquin getting loud and angry at a man man named Larry, and the constant whispering behind the cameras before dropping a few F-bombs and storming off this set. When the cameras came back to the studio, Joaquin was frozen in shock and clearly not expecting that clip to ever see the light of day. He is not having a good time. He explained that Larry was a cinematographer who teased Joaquin off set earlier in the day, calling him a diva and referring to him as Cher. In fact, if you're watching the clip and during the outbursts, you can actually hear him say, "You want to call me Cher? How is that an insult?" He then explained that there is a lot of pressure on set, especially in a closed space, like the apartment from the scene that they were filming. He apologized to the audience for having to see him behave like that, which, was met with applause. Because at the end of the day, he's a performer and no harm came from the outburst or the meltdown, and honestly, if Larry's cool with it, so are we. Number 5, Nicolas Cage. The most unhinged man in Hollywood history. One of the few people who somehow managed to star in billions of movies, but has barely seen or kept a cent of that money. During a press junket in 1990, Nick went on a talk show called Wogan to discuss his latest project, Wild at Heart. When the host Terry Wogan announced Nick Cage, he entered with karate kicks, a front flip, somersault. He threw wads of cash at the audience because, hey, he's Nick Cage, why not? And when he finally sat down, moments before the interview actually began, he asked if he could take his jacket off. He proceeds to take his jacket off and the shirt underneath of it, because if people thought Nick Cage was all together, they were proven wrong during this interview. Despite the content being relatively tamed, the entire time you can just see sweat glistening off of Nick's chest, because guess what? Wearing a leather jacket on your bare chest is beyond uncomfortable, especially when there are lights aimed at you. Now sure, it might look cool until you take it off and you just have a heat rash. Nick's always been unhinged, but this meltdown during this interview was truly unique. His behavior in the 90s was apparent and well documented thanks to him literally being in like 2 movies a year. Number 4, Christian Bale. Christian is a very versatile actor, physically and of course skill-wise. He's able to shrink and grow his physique seemingly at will. He's played everything from a skinny substance addict to Batman in 2008. Christian starred in the 3rd film of the Terminator franchise, Terminator Salvation, and while he was filming a scene, director of photography Shane Holbert apparently just moved into Christian's eyesight, and this caused Christian to snap out of character and into defense mode. The now infamous audio clip of Christian screaming at Shane to make matters worse, anyone trying to calm Christian down were met with an equally swift verbal lashing. While the cinematographer was just checking a light to make sure that it was in the right place, like doing his job, Bale made it his mission to share his intense feelings with the entire crew. When the audio leaked, Bale apologized for his actions and told the world to praise the crew for their work. Now while the movie turned out okay visually speaking, the project as a whole is remembered as a terrible Terminator movie, and he gets pretty uncomfortable when he talks about it on stage. Number 3, Paris Hilton. Paris is the originator of the phrase famous for being famous, because this woman made headlines many times over the years for a little bit of everything. In 2011, Paris appeared on ABC to discuss her career, her personal life, and the recent situations she had been dealing with involving stalkers. During the interview, she revealed a few things about her life that had previously been speculated, like the fact that she used a higher-pitched baby voice on the show Simple Life, but had a much deeper and serious tone in real life. But the conversation eventually ventures into uncharted waters. The interviewer asked Paris if she felt that her former friend and protege, Kim Kardashian, had overshadowed her in the eyes of the media. Paris says nothing, looks to her publicist, and goes to stand up. They almost wrapped the interview entirely, but eventually things simmered down and they were able to clear up the air. However, the moment stuck with fans of Hilton immediately and begged the question, why is she so uncomfortable talking about this? And it's because it's true. Well, it turns out the world answered the question for her, because Kim Kardashian's show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, made it big, and Paris Hilton's show was cancelled after 1 season. So, there you go. Number 2, Tom Cruise. Matt Lauer is not just a terrible person who turned out to be a creepy creepo. He was once a popular talk show host in the early 2000s. During an interview with Tom Cruise in 2005, the topic of his scientific beliefs came up that quickly sent Tom into a rant about psychiatry, and somehow the topic got into Ritalin and pseudosciences. I don't know, Tom yelled at Matt about knowing more than him about psychiatry, like he had some inside information that he was secretly a therapist, who knows. The interview came at the height of Tom's pretty public descent into chaotic badness, becoming very famous for his outlandish beliefs and his wish to push them onto other people. The highlight of the interview came when Cruise was asked about his previous criticisms of Brooke Shields taking anti-sad time pills, to which he responded by calling her a glib. I looked up the definition of that word, and it means fluent and voluble, but insincere and shallow. But this was only one of the several interviews from 2005 that I wanted to discuss today, especially with Tom Cruise. Good lord, that was a rough year for him. When he was with Katie Holmes, he was a nutcase. Just ask Oprah. I mean, ever since the mid-2000s, his career has mainly been Mission Impossible, with only a few small roles to fill the gaps here and there, not the Hollywood superstar that he was aiming to be. And at number 1, my favorite entry, Bobcat Goldthwait. Allow me to start the entry by doing an impression of Bobcat. Thank you. Bobcat may not be much of an actor these days, but in the 80s and 90s, this man was dominating the film and comedy scene. His zany brand of over-the-top, high-energy performance was so well received by any and all who saw him. I can still hear his voice echoing in my head whenever I think of Police Academy. In 1994, comedian Arsenio Hall invited his longtime buddy Bobcat onto his talk show, which unfortunately was in its final days on the air. When he heard the cancellation, Bobcat decided to send a message to the big brains that made the decision, because he spray painted the word Paramount on the wall behind him, throws furniture around, breaks TV screens, all the while Arsenio is just sitting back and laughing. When they returned from commercial, the set was in ruins, and despite that, Arsenio joked that he was like, "The worst part is I have to pretend like I'm mad at him." Joke's on him, that wasn't the only talk show meltdown he partook in. A few years after this, Bobcat set a chair on fire on the Jay Leno show for no reason, just for fun. Like he was standing there just going, fire. He was fined over $3,000 and made to replace the chair. Oh, and in case you haven't noticed, he hasn't been asked to be on any talk shows recently. Number 10, Billie Eilish. Billie is one of the best musicians around right now. You show anyone a picture of her or even play 1 second of the song Bad Guy, the instant answer is Billie Eilish. While Billie has been making music for a long time, she hasn't always enjoyed the fame that comes with it. In 2020, she revealed that the pressure started really kicking in around 2016, having to deal with many things that would make most adults crumble. She was still a teen at the time, and having a massive crowd gathering around you every time you step outside isn't as fun as it sounds. In the interview with the LA Times, she explained that she hated going outside. Being recognized by anyone was panic-inducing. She just wanted to do normal teenage things without being spotted by paparazzi. She then explained that being locked in her home in 2020 actually helped her reflect on her situation and grow as an individual. It's understandable that the pressure that she had that young made her feel uncomfortable. I mean, look at how many child actors quit acting for the exact same reasons. That and a lot of DUIs. Number 9, Brad Pitt. In 2019, Brad sat down with Entertainment Tonight Canada to discuss things that drive him to take the roles he chooses to take. Pitt has been around since the mid-1990s and has gone nowhere but up and away. While he's not much of a franchise man, Pitt has been a busy bee, starring in several blockbuster hits like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and so many more. Despite being a megastar, Brad has actually struggled with his fame over the years. He actually got very introspective in the interview, explaining the struggle wasn't the glitz and the glamour, but rather the distance that was growing between himself and everyone in his life. He says that as he got older, the people he surrounded himself with had become more and more important to him. He goes on to say that his time working on set meant that he wouldn't be able to enjoy things that he wished to do with his money, like traveling the world. Even though he's filmed in some pretty luxurious locations, actors rarely get enough free time to actually enjoy the scenery. It seems that Brad's been able to get over his gripes and now leaves time for himself between films to get groovy. Number 8, Jim Carrey. Jim's considered to be one of the funniest men in history. In 1995 alone, he had 3 blockbuster comedies make it big at the box office, with Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, Dumb and Dumber, and The Mask. As the years have gone by, his films have been a roller coaster of genres. He slowly started moving into the realm of real films like Yes Man and The Number 23. That movie was really when people started to wonder if things were okay with Jim, and according to Jim himself, he was more than fine, he was learning. Jim has become a very introspective person as time has gone on, becoming more and more spiritual and sure of himself. He slowed down in the acting world and started painting, creating some beautiful and disturbing pieces in his studio in New York, but the world of Hollywood wasn't letting him go so easy. Jim starred as Dr. Robotnik, aka Eggman, in the live-action Sonic the Hedgehog movies that gave Jim the modern-day boost he needed to pop back into the mainstream. However, while being interviewed on the red carpet for Sonic 2, Jim explained that there was so many things over the years that he has been forced to ignore because of how busy he's been, joking that there was 25 years of Mystery Science Theater to catch up on. He goes on to say that his paintings will soon be available as non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, a word that I did not think would ever come from Jim Carrey's mouth. In recent interviews, Jim has been pretty adamant about quitting the acting world forever, so it's looking more and more like that last Sonic movie may be his last film, period. Number 7, Daniel Radcliffe. Dan the man with the plan can play Peter Pan. I nailed it. Mr. Radcliffe, of course, rose to fame when he was just 12, portraying the iconic magical misfit Harry Potter in the film series based on the novels by J.K. Rowling. Dan is one of the few child actors who continued to work following the end of their franchise, being in every genre imaginable, from dramatic art piece films like Swiss Army Man to the action thriller Men's Akimbo, I can't say the first word, to the horror flick Women in Black. Dan proved that he was more than a scar and some glasses. Now, of course, starting to be such a big name at such a young age had a massive effect on Dan. Growing up in one of the most profitable franchises of all time, he would make regular appearances at conventions and in studios. Apparently, he experienced a lot of hate for some reason because fans would boo him when he walked on stage, something that he claims to be long-lasting and anxiety fuel. Thankfully, the harsh words never stopped him from doing what he loved, appearing in 8 Harry Potter movies before morphing into the Hollywood A-lister that he is today. Number 6, Kylie Jenner. Kylie is one of the younger members of the Kardashian clan. Being rich and famous at such a young age has apparently dramatically impacted her day-to-day. In an interview from 2015, Jenner said that she woke up every morning with the worst anxiety, claiming to launch out of bed around 7 or 6 because she's nervous that there's going to be some negative article waiting for her to deal with. Fear is warranted, as over the years her name has been on the front page of media outlets quite a few times for various scandals and rumors. Unfortunately, though, most of the things that have been revealed have been proven to be true, like the mistreatment of employees at her cosmetic factory, or the fact that she lied to Forbes about how rich she was, stuff like that. Number 5, Megan Fox. One of 2 Transformers alumni that'll be on this list is Megan Fox, who is one of the few people that hated acting so much that they did eventually retire. Megan was, of course, the hottest woman in Hollywood in the mid-2000s, but following her departure from the Transformers franchise, things started to take a turn. She was being casted in less and less, seemingly due to her bashing Hollywood any chance that she had. The reason she was let go from Transformers was because she referred to Michael Bay as a former leader of Germany whose name rhymes with Schmittler. Between 2012 and 2023, Megan only starred in one big blockbuster flick, which was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the live-action series. So bad it was remade into an animated feature this year and it made millions. Megan actually called out Hollywood a few times in the past, claiming that the process behind developing a film and casting the project was disgusting. She felt like an object many times in her career, and rightfully so. Every scene of Megan during the day in Transformers looks like it's an Axe body spray commercial or a clip from Spike TV. While she is adamant that she absolutely hates being famous, she seems to be appearing in movies again, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe Hollywood likes it when their actor teases them, gives them a little tingle in the downstairs, Kinky. Number 4, George Clooney. George was a massive star in Hollywood, being deemed a Hollywood heartthrob thanks to his work on the hit series ER. Over the years, Clooney's career has been filled with many hits like Ocean's 11, as well as a brief stint as Batman in 1997 that I will never let him live down. In recent years, things have slowed down drastically for the heartthrob, being casted in less and less roles the closer he got to this year. His last 2 roles were in The Flash and Ticket to Paradise with Julia Roberts, both of which received terrible box office return. This may have something to do with George believing that Hollywood is an extremely toxic place. In an interview with IndieWire, Clooney said that fame can be very dangerous. While he's maintained a rather humble approach to life, that wasn't always the case. George recounted how early in his career he enjoyed the sneaky nature of the press. He enjoyed the fame being delivered to him on a daily basis, and it eventually messed with his mental health. Over the years, he tried to separate himself from his projects once they wrapped up, but these days he spends a lot of time away from the spotlight, instead being just a full-time human trying to exist. Number 3, Shia LaBeouf. Shia is an interesting man. For a long time, he was Hollywood's go-to funny guy to throw into a movie and TV shows, but since 2015, he's existed in this weird space between superstar and just super jerk. Over the years, many situations involving Shia, including everything from shoving a dude to mistreating his ex, have been brought to light. This was part of the reason that he slowly started being casted in less and less projects, with his last big franchise being the 3rd Transformers movie. Since he's had a slew of indie and passion projects, but according to Shia himself, the entire idea of Hollywood is soul-crushing. During a Q&A at the Tribeca Film Festival in 2015, he claimed that there was little to no inclusivity in the industry, that he was a product for the studio to sell, and then he went off into a bit of a tangent that I won't quote fully because it will cause headaches. But to summarize in English that we can understand, Shia hated being famous for being someone's puppet and not for his own creative material. As we know, Shia hasn't retired from acting, but following the revelations, he has appeared in far more indie projects, which means he's given almost complete creative control, as showcased in the 2019 award-winning film Honey Boy, which was loosely based on his life. Number 2, Robert Pattinson. Robert rose to fame thanks to playing the sparkly man with the plan, Edward Cullen, in the live-action Twilight series, and while many are under the impression that being a part of such an iconic role would be a game-changer for most, for Robert it was just a waking nightmare. Sitting down for an interview in 2015, Rob gets real about the insanity that followed the release of Twilight. As one would expect, he was bombarded by fans in the streets constantly. People were literally sitting outside of his house waiting for him to emerge, and it just drove him crazy. He didn't go into a supermarket in person for over 6 years, but these days he can actually exist in public since the Twilight stuff has kind of died down. He was honest in the interview and expressed that he is one of the most uncomfortable people in his normal life, and it took him a very long time to reach the level of comfort that he has now. All the fame of being an actor has little impact on him these days, as he has become a much more serious actor with films like The Batman and Tenet under his belt. Thankfully, the whole Twilight thing is over and done with for now. Oh, but a prequel to The Hunger Games did just come out, so Twilight prequel? Number 1, Gigi Hadid. The Hadid modeling empire is strong, with Gigi being one of 2 Hadids roaming the runways of Paris. Despite coming from a wealthy family and living one of the most lavish lifestyles around, Gigi actually hates everything about it. According to herself, being busy for long periods of time means she isn't able to make time for people who she actually cares about in her life. She has lost a lot of friends over the years simply because she was unavailable and they drifted apart. This is a fair reason to hate your fame, but at the same time, if your friends can't respect that you're across the world modeling Chanel and Louis Vuitton, maybe they don't deserve to be your friends. Besides, I have seen Gigi's Coca-Cola ad, and she said she loves doing game night with her friends all the time. You trying to tell me Gigi Hadid lied? That's fair, she probably did. Number 10, Samuel Jackson. Sam Jackson is a sweetheart. Over his career, spanning like 40 years now, this man has only received 1 Oscar, and it was an honorary Oscar presented at a private ceremony last year. However, he's been nominated time and time again for his incredible performances, only to be passed over by someone else. Well, in 1995, Sam had the most genuine reaction to losing the Oscar for Best Actor in a Supporting Role to Martin Landau. Anna Paquin, who was only 12 at the time and already won an Oscar for her part in The Piano, presented the nominee list. The moment that she says the name Martin Landau, Sam Jackson says, and looks away from the camera. The camera never cuts back to Sam, lingering on Martin Landau as he delivers his acceptance speech while switching from his nighttime glasses to his reading glasses. That actually happened on stage. When speaking about the night in recent years, Sam has commented that movies are movies, and at the end of the day his job is to get butts into seats, which he does brilliantly. To be fair though, the role that he did not receive that Oscar for was Jules Winfield from Pulp Fiction. And while Ed Wood is a fine movie and Martin Landau did okay, Sam Jackson deserved that award for that movie, okay? People still shout that Marcellus Wallace monologue on stage to this day. Say what again? Say what again? It doesn't sound right coming out of me. Number 9, Drake. The rapper is known for dropping little to no shade to his fellow performers, but he is a Toronto sweetheart, so when he's in town he likes to attend NBA games and support his team, the Toronto Raptors. The NBA actually got complaints about Drake's behavior courtside. Most of the time he's just a loud fan hyping up his team, which is allowed, but sometimes Drake has broken court etiquette several occasions. He seems to think that because he's Drake, he's good to go, but the facts are that you can't just walk over to the head coach of the Toronto Raptors and start rubbing his shoulders to hype him up. He continued to attend events, but looks like a toddler who just got in trouble at a few of them. His hometown is not the only place that he's been asked to tone things down though. A while back, the NBA made a similar request about his antics after an altercation between himself and Cleveland Cavaliers' Kendrick Perkins, where the two launched into a profanity-driven argument and security had to step in to de-escalate the situation. Every time he attends one of these games now, he just has to be on his best behavior, which is apparently no behavior at all. Number 8, Eminem. Who hasn't this man thrown shade towards? Okay, there are countless celebrities to use, so let's just name a couple. Most of his disses are limited to his music career, and that also seems to be where he shines. In The Real Slim Shady alone, he drops some devastating lines about Will Smith, Pam Anderson, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, NSYNC, and Dr. Dre. The lyrics are usually a comment on the person's behavior or possibly something they did to him personally. He shaded Mariah Carey because they apparently dated at some point and he was upset about her status. And in the early 2000s, he also got pretty upset after Sacha Baron Cohen popped up over the crowd at an awards ceremony on wires wearing basically nothing, and he was suddenly lowered onto Eminem, who was struggling to get him spun around and back onto the stage. But that turned out to be a planned stunt done for fun because Sasha's fun and he likes to do fun things to unsuspecting people. Eminem drops shade every other day, but when he puts you in a song, prepare to be devastated. No, I will not rap for you because I know you will roast me, not to mention all of the no-no words I'm not allowed to say online, and it would make no sense. If I could swear, oh, I'd be rapping up a storm. Number 7, Prince. Any fans of the late great Prince will remember that he was not much for making speaking appearances, so when he presented Halle Berry with a National Association for the Advancement of Colored People Image Award, it was a massive deal. As she took the stage, she was starstruck. As if the night couldn't get any better, she was just handed an award by Prince, who she had loved for a very long time. And as she said that to the cameras, they cut to Prince, who gives a very humble bow and fans himself, but the next time we cut to his face, he looks so annoyed, like he just wanted her to get off the stage so he could go sit down already. Despite the clear annoyance even after his passing, Halle Berry has gushed about the night and how they eventually got to a good place before his passing and now considers him a friend. Number 6, Leonardo DiCaprio. After seeing the clip from this awards show, I'm starting to think Leo might have had a bit too much no-no juice. In 2016, Lady Gaga walked by Leonardo DiCaprio while making her way to the stage to accept her Golden Globe Award. As she brushes past him, Leo is clearly laughing about something with a buddy a few tables down, but he didn't notice Gaga pass by at first, so when he does, the camera captured just a wonderful and very human moment where he looks up with these like, ooh, yikes kind of eyes. I watched the clip back and I noticed that the man that he was giggling with was actually Will Smith, sitting next to Jada. The internet saw this as him somehow shading Lady Gaga, but he raised his eyebrows, but later told people that it was just a natural reaction from not knowing who or what was behind him. At the end of the day, this shade was nothing more than a man having a good time when suddenly Lady Gaga walked behind him. Hey man, if I was in Lady Gaga's way and she had to maneuver around me, I would also hang my head in shame and just avoid eye contact. That's never happened to me, thankfully. Number 5, Samuel L. Jackson. Again, Sam Jackson is such a good dude. When he is doing interviews especially, he is just very down to earth and easygoing. He is also not shy when it comes to calling out strange or rude questions or misinformation during interviews. He stopped by KTLA Morning News Now to promote the remake of RoboCop, when reporter Sam Rubin couldn't wait to ask him about his career and the cool movies he had been in. The problem was, though, that Sam actually confused Mr. Jackson with the actor Lawrence Fishburne from The Matrix. Sam asked Mr. Jackson about his most recent Super Bowl commercial and saw a confused look start to wash over his face. He realized what was happening and apologized for the mix-up, but Jackson did not let the situation go. Instead, he started hounding this dude for messing up who he was. According to Lawrence Fishburne, this is actually a pretty common mistake and one that he does not mind, as it is a compliment on both parts. Sam Jackson played the whole thing off as funny more than mean-spirited, even tweeting a picture of himself from roughly a month later where he is wearing a shirt that says, "I'm not Lawrence Fishburne." What a legend. Number 4, Joan Rivers. While speaking with CNN host Frederica Whitfield about her role as a fashion critique on the reality series Fashion Police, Joan didn't appreciate the questions that she was being asked. While calm at first, the host claimed that Joan's comments on the show might be considered mean or cold-hearted, and fans wanted to hear what she had to say. Before even being able to finish that sentence though, Joan clapped back and said that she is not mean and says the truth. She's just saying what people on the couches at home are probably thinking, ya jerk. She called people and their style ugly, and she might be cold, but but her words are meant to heal and not to berate. The interviewer then went on to ask Joan how she felt her words were coming across to the audience of both her show and to the readers of the book that apparently featured some very dark content about people that Joan had no business discussing. Joan said that if you can make something funny in life, do it. Well, that's not true. A lot of people have pretty dark jokes about some dark stuff, and I'm not even allowed to repeat what they are on the internet. Not a great defense, Joni. The final straw came when Joan was asked about the fur coat that she was wearing on the cover of her book and the backlash that she might face from animal rights activists. Well, Joan got furious and started to leave the interview, but not before calling out Frederica for asking negative questions, for wearing leather shoes, and reminding her that she made people laugh for 50 years, lady. Yeah, she walked off and never returned. Number 3, Cardi B. In 2017, rapper Cardi B and model Asia Davies appeared on an episode of VH1's Love and Hip Hop. Things became heated pretty quick when the topic of Asia's ex-boyfriend Swift came up. According to Davies, she was convinced that Cardi and Swift were intimate together while she was still dating him. Cardi responded to the accusations by throwing her stiletto at Asia's face, and then jumping up and began making her way towards the model, but was stopped by 2 large security guards. Good thing too, considering on the other side of the room, Asia had done the exact same thing and was also being held back. An all-out brawl almost took place, but the altercation resulted in the pair yelling at each other from across the room, and Cardi's main problem was the judgment being placed on her for being an exotic dancer before her time as a music. Hey, that didn't come up in the conversation. While Davies claimed that wasn't the case, it was very clear from both their verbal and physical language that there is some shade between them, and it is not going away anytime soon. Number 2, Olivia Rodrigo. Olivia Rodrigo and Joshua Bassett co-starred on the Disney Plus series High School Musical, the series. During their time on set, they developed a relationship that apparently didn't end well, and it might have something to do with one Miss Sabrina Carpenter. The Bizarre Varks alumni made headlines in January of 2021 after releasing her debut single, Driver's License. The hit song resonated with Rodrigo's fans, including Taylor Swift, but it also caused some to think that it was about the rumored drama between herself, Bassett, and Carpenter. Her lyrics were, "And you probably with that blonde girl who always made me doubt. She's so much older than me, she's everything I'm insecure about." The main reason people think that this is a dig at Carpenter is because initially the lyrics were brunette girl, not blonde girl. Big difference. Apparently changing it following the news of Sabrina's relationship with Bassett. Sabrina and Olivia basically started a singing roast battle. Apparently they just started releasing songs around the same time as each other, including topics of liars, cheaters, jealousy, all the good stuff, and it looks like the feud will be fueling quite a few hit songs in the near future. And at number 1, Selena Gomez. Selena Gomez and Hailey Bieber share a feud that reminds us of 2 high school kids that just can't seem to get along, and it is over a boy. Selena Gomez dated Canadian pop star Justin Bieber for quite some time through the 2010s, but the relationship was rocky and they would often split up and get back together over and over again. Justin had been friends with Hailey Baldwin for a few years, with that relationship apparently becoming romantic at one point. While initially this was the cause of the feud between these two, more recently there seems to be a more personal reason for their hatred. A TikTok user posted a side-by-side comparison video of Hailey and Selena to show how much Hailey had been copying Selena Gomez. There were pictures of them wearing similar outfits. They also compared the coincidence of Hailey starting a YouTube cooking series called What's in My Kitchen at the same time that Selena had just released an HBO Max cooking show called Selena Plus Chef. Gomez was quick to thank fans for acknowledging the strange copycat behavior and let the world know that she was well aware of the similarities starting to rise, and she wasn't having any fun at all. Number 10, Nick Cage. One of the most unhinged men in Hollywood history. One of the few people who somehow managed to star in billions of movies, but he's barely been able to keep a cent of it. During a press junket in 1990, Nick Cage went on a talk show called Wogan to discuss his latest project, Wild at Heart. When the host Terry Wogan announced Nick Cage, he entered with karate kicks, a front flip, a somersault, he threw wads of cash at the audience because he's Nick frickin' Cage, and he finally sat down. Moments before the interview truly began, Nick asked if he could just take his jacket off, and he proceeded to take his jacket off and the shirt underneath it. If people thought Nick was all altogether, this was when they were proven wrong. Despite the content being relatively tame, the entire time you can just see the sweat glistening off his chest, cause guess what, wearing a leather jacket without anything underneath is beyond uncomfortable. Sure, it might look cool until you take it off and you're covered in a heat rash. Nick's always been unhinged, but his behavior in the 1990s was apparent and well documented thanks to him literally being in a minimal of 2 movies a year. Number 9. Jada Pinkett Smith. Yeah, Jada snapped, but no, it's not in the grandiose, wild fashion like some of the other entries on this list will be. Jada has slowly been losing her mind as time has gone on, but she officially snapped while doing press for her new memoir, Worthy, which really should have been called Worthless. I say that because you actually don't need to own the book to know its contents. Jada decided to share those live on TV for a week straight before her book came out, and in one of those interviews it saw her revealing that she was separated from Will Smith for 7 years despite appearing to be a strong and happy couple for so long. Jada has always been so adamant that she is a good person and that herself and Will are best friends who do anything for each other, and she also revealed a lot of stuff that I don't have the mental capacity to repeat. That is how much this woman has drained my soul. She may not have snapped in the way that many of you hoped for, and I'm sure there are already people typing in the comments that Jada's insane and I'm an idiot. Yeah, I see those. Thanks a lot for the views, guys. But this is my list, and I want to share how terrible she is as often as possible. Number 8. Bobcat Goldthwait. Alright, thank you. Bobcat may not be much of an actor these days, but in the 1980s and the 90s, this dude was dominating the film and comedy scene. His zany brand of over-the-top, high-energy performance was well received by any and all who saw him. I can still hear his voice echoing in my head whenever I think of Police Academy. In 1994, comedian Arsenio Hall invited his longtime buddy onto the talk show, which unfortunately was in its final days on air. And when he heard of the cancellation, Bobcat decided to send a message to the big brains that made that decision. He spray painted the word Paramount on the wall behind him, he threw furniture around, broke TV screens, and all the while Arsenio is just sitting back and enjoying the show. When they returned from commercial, they were sitting in ruins, and despite that, Arsenio joked, saying, "The worst part is, I have to pretend like I'm mad at this guy." Joke's on him, that wasn't the only talk show that he melted down on. A few years later after this, Bobcat set a chair on fire on the Jay Leno show, aka The Tonight Show, for no reason, just for fun. Like, he was standing there just going, "Fire!" Man, that voice is fun. Go listen to him. He was fined over $3,000 and made to replace the chair. Oh, and in case you haven't noticed, he hasn't been asked to be on a talk show ever since. Number 7. Joan Rivers. While speaking with CNN host Frederica Whitfield about her role as a fashion critique on the reality series Fashion Police, Joan didn't appreciate the questions that she was being asked. While calm at first, the host claimed that Joan's comments on the show may be considered mean or cold-hearted, but the fans wanted to hear what she had to say. Before even being able to finish that sentence, Joan clapped back saying it's not mean, claiming that she says the truth. She's just saying what the people on the couch at home are probably thinking. She called people and their style ugly. She may be cold, but her words are meant to heal and not to berate. Alright, so everyone who called me ugly in high school was just encouraging me then. The interviewer then went on to ask Joan how she felt her words were coming across to the audience on both her show and the readers of her book, which apparently featured some pretty dark content about people that Joan had no business discussing. Joan said, "If you can make something funny in life, do it. Hey, I got pages and pages of jokes about the events in New York in 2001, but I don't say them out loud because they're horrible and make people uncomfortable." It's not a great defense, Joni. The final straw came when Joan was asked about the fur coat that she was wearing on the cover of her book and the backlash that she would face from animal rights activists. Well, Joan got furious and decided to leave the interview, but not before calling out Frederica for asking such negative questions, for wearing leather shoes, and for reminding her that she made people laugh for over 50 years. Quit asking her why she did what she did and what she's wearing. She's done. And then she just walked off and was never invited to return again. Number 6. Mike Tyson. It's hard to pick just one Mike Tyson meltdown, so let's talk about a couple of them. He got his start in the world of professional boxing in the early 80s, but as the years went by, controversies came up left and right, and this is probably why he had such troubled history with interviewers. In the mid-1990s, he was speaking with a news anchor from Channel 5 News when he got annoyed at the line of questioning, suggesting that his recent 6-month hiatus may threaten his ability to box. Mike said, "F you," and a few other things that I just can't quote, but that wasn't even close to the level of fury that this man is capable of. During another press tour for his latest bout in the early 2000s, he was wrapping up an interview when he lashed out at a fan in the crowd and started hurling a slew of insults at them, calling them the British word for cancer sticks, starts with an F and it rhymes with maggot. The clip became viral overnight and placed his career even further in jeopardy than it already was, but he finally drove the nail in the coffin on CP24's Breakfast TV in 2014. After somehow maintaining enough relevance to get a one-man show, Mike was sitting down with host Nathan Downer when the interview took a hard left and went from, "So, what's the show about?" to, "So, should you even be allowed on stage, you monster?" That's not actually what he said, but that's what Mike heard. He stopped answering the questions honestly and instead just started responding with sarcastic insults, more F-words, and several threats to the anchor. Seriously, whoever keeps letting that guy go on camera, just take him away, put him in a different room. Number 5, Crispin Glover. Crispin may not be a very active member in Hollywood these days, but he has most certainly been in some of your favorite top 10 movies, being featured in stuff like Charlie's Angels and Back to the Future. Crispin was always considered to be a bit of an eccentric guy both on and off camera. In 1987, he made one of the most notorious appearances in late night history when he was a guest on The Late Night Show with David Letterman and was supposed to promote a new indie flick called River's Edge, but instead he delivered a bizarre interview without any clear reason why. Many have speculated that this is a staged bit, but no one's ever actually confirmed that story, considering how unhinged Crispin is. Maybe. From the moment Crispin is brought on set, he seems to be distressed. He wore strange clothes, including black platform shoes that made him like an extra 6 inches taller. Instead of answering questions about the project, he decided to rant about his portrayal by the media, literally pulling out press clips and quoting them on air. Remember newspapers? He claimed people thought he was weak and then challenged David to an arm wrestle before getting out of his chair, delivering a high kick in David's direction and just getting so close to his face. David giggled and then cut the interview short. Whether it was staged or not, Crispin's infamous interview will always go down in history as the moment that he snapped live on TV. Number 4, Charlie Sheen. Charlie rose to fame in the 80s after starring in a slew of cult classic flicks like Red Dawn, The Boys Next Door, and that little cameo he had in Ferris Bueller. Those are the only ones that I've seen. He fell into the mainstream, however, in 2003 when he began playing the character Charlie Harper in the hit sitcom 2.5 Men. So good that just mentioning it gets that song in your head. However, in 2009 he was arrested for attempting to harm his wife Brooke Mueller on several occasions, and at the time of his arrest both parties had been indulging in no-no juice, with Sheen becoming enraged beyond control according to the reports. Following this, a restraining order was placed prohibiting Sheen from being within 100 feet of both Brooke and their children, and despite all that controversy, Charlie was later seen doing press on air for an upcoming movie on the Today Show when the interviewer asked Charlie what was behind his sudden behavior, claiming that he was being perceived as this angry and wild guy, but Sheen responded with, excuse me, it's not anger, it's my passion, before launching into a no-no-snow-fueled tirade. It is a wonderful interview. He claimed that his brain functioned within a separate realm to ours, and Charlie's interview was defensive to say the least, with his energy just being weird and aggressive the entire time. Ever since then, Charlie's maintained this weird air of arrogance towards himself and still believes that he's the king of TV and winning, when in reality this is most likely the first time you've heard about him in quite a while. Number 3, Kanye West. Kanye was slowly going mad in the eyes of the public in 2010, but as the years went by, he did more and more TV appearances. It wasn't until 2018 though when his political beliefs just got him heated on live TV. On Jimmy Kimmel Live, when he asked Kanye how he felt about the response to his decree that he was all set for the president at the time, Donald T., which was largely criticized, he defended his statements by claiming that he did not have to conform to a united mindset and he was just a bit upset about the backlash, but that some of him kinda liked it. He then suggested that the world was in a simulation, claimed that it was filled with unpaid actors. This over 20-minute interview is just filled with metaphors, concept of love. He compared himself to the Son of God. This interview is just only a short time after his anti-Semitic tweets were circulating the internet. He even makes a joke about being anxious about asking his publicist to be on the show. He was fairly calm in his delivery of his opinions, but he snapped on TV, and then a couple weeks later, heck, a couple days later even, he snapped again in real life. Number 2, Tom Cruise. It's one thing to be asking people to join your church all the time, but Tom's behavior as a member of society has been rough to say the least. Following the announcement that he was engaged to Katie Holmes back in the early 2000s, Tom appeared on an episode of The Oprah Winfrey Show that has gone down in history as one of the most chaotic moments in TV history. From the moment that he walks on stage, he has such strange energy, like he's so excited, he just got the best news in his entire life. Well, it was because he was engaged. He throws his arms up in the air, he rubs Oprah's over his shoulder like she's a lamp and he wants to summon Robin Williams. He revealed to the audience that the excitement was from his engagement to fellow actor Katie Holmes, which is awesome, but he was trying to break Oprah. Like, he jumped on her couch, grabbed her hands over and over again. She couldn't even get questions out because he was being so chaotic. Eventually, Oprah was like, alright, just bring out Katie Holmes, and then the camera crew followed Tom through the hallways while he ran around looking for her like a Paranormal Activity scene or something. Tom's energy continued to stay at that level of chaos throughout his entire marriage to Katie, and since the divorce, he's still just kinda nuts. And at number 1, Will Smith. Oh, when did Will Smith have a meltdown on live TV? I'm just kidding, you guys. We all know about the Oscars. In 2022, Chris Rock was hosting the 94th annual Oscars when he decided to make a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith and her hair. Rock expressed he was just so stoked to see her in a new G.I. Jane movie. And immediately following that joke, which landed for everyone else in the audience, Rock stood in confusion because Will Smith was on his way to the stage. Will adjusted his jacket, he took a nice firm stance, and then just clocked him across the face. He winded it up too, just to get the ultimate force into that. Initially being seen as a planned joke, Will then started shouting at him to keep his wife's name out of his flippin' mouth. Chris handled the situation pretty well. He kept his cool, laughed it off, and brought the next award presenter out. He was professional and kept things going, but an hour later, Will Smith won an Oscar for Best Actor. He played Richard Williams, the father of tennis superstars Venus and Serena, and during his speech he gave a half-hearted apology for his actions, before saying that the situation was because he was playing that character for so long and it made him feel paternal. Unfortunately for Will, slapping was enough to get him banned from the Oscars indefinitely. Not just that, but he has also been banned from Hollywood so far, as he is now being seen as an aggressive dude with no impulse control. He was fired from upcoming projects, he sits at home all day, polishing his one and only Oscar next to a single candle in a dark room.